Welcome to the Scrum.org Community Podcast, a podcast from the home of Scrum. In this podcast, we feature professional Scrum trainers and other Scrum practitioners sharing their stories and experiences to help learn from the experience of others. This episode is a previous recording of our live Ask a Professional Scrum Trainer series, where a live audience asks questions of professional Scrum trainers. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you might be in the world. Thank you for joining today's webinar, or today's Ask a PST. And my name is Eric Neighborg. I'll be your host today, as I am the COO of Scrum.org and run marketing and operations in different pieces. And I'm joined today by one of our professional Scrum trainers, Deneir. And Stephen joins us from Belgium today and is going to take your hardest and most difficult questions and hopefully try to answer them to the best that he can. Just briefly, some quick guidelines. Your microphones will be muted. The session will be recorded and will be available within the next 24 hours or so up on our website if you want to revisit it, if you have friends you want to point to it, and so on. If you have questions, please use the Q&A button. You'll see that on your panel, and we're all very familiar with Zoom these days. So just use that Q&A panel to ask your questions, and we'll go through those and take them the best we can. So briefly, excuse me, who is Scrum.org? Scrum.org is a mission-based organization and focused on helping people and teams solve complex problems. We're founded by co-creator of Scrum, Ken Schwaber, who's our chairman and, as I said, founder. And we focus kind of in three areas. We do training, we do certification, and continued ongoing learning. There's thousands of free resources, blogs, many blogs from Stephen, for example, videos, webinars like this, and other things that are available on our website to continue that ongoing learning and helping you to keep growing as you get more experience and as you need more. So with that, I will turn it over to Stephen for him to introduce himself briefly, and then we'll start taking your questions.
Cool. Thanks, Eric. Stephen from today, sunny Belgium, in contrast to the previous days. It was raining like crazy. My background in Scrum dates since 2001. Where there was not so much information available in my region. So I did some side tracks in project management, which also helped me to learn a lot why Scrum is helping us so good in initiatives compared to other frameworks or methodologies. In the back, you see my biggest hobby, which is Lego. And for the rest time, I'm looking forward to get all your questions and get started with it.
Perfect. So I think we're ready to get started. We've got some questions already starting to come in. And please, like I said, type your questions in that Q&A box as you have any, and we're happy to take them as they come. So the first question, Fabio asks, can you describe a bit about how an architect on a Scrum team would work with the rest of the team? How are they involved? Can you talk a bit about architecture and how that fits and how an architect can bring value to the team?
Yeah, that's a good question. I see it happening quite a lot in companies that the role stays what it is as it was in the past. For me, architecture is a skill just as any other skill, like software development, software testing, analyzing, designing. So for me, I would hope that the architect is open to share his skills, knowledge, insights with the other colleagues so that they can learn from him or her, and vice versa, that the architect is open to learn other skills from the team. So he's not only limited anymore to architecture, but can also, for example, help with validations, with reviewing, with testing, with analyzing more, because it's a key skill. It's really a key skill. And only depending on one person would be quite a risk in a team, I would expect. Especially if you are scaling Scrum and you have multiple teams even going on, and you only have one architect as part of one specific team, the skill should certainly be taken up by others also. Does this answer, Fabio, do you have follow-on questions on that one?
If you do, please feel free to add those to the Q&A. Excuse me, to the Q&A, and Stephen will take that, and we'll continue to go through. So next question: how do you deal with projects in Scrum? How do you handle? We talk about a product mindset. We talk about products, but people often still think in that context of project. How's that handled?
Yeah, I'm currently facing that, in fact, with my current customer, with my main customer. The main question I always ask to people coming with that point is, first of all, is this project, as they call it, addressing one specific product? And if that is the case, I typically advise people to put that question, that challenge, that opportunity, which they call project, as a big item or maybe a smaller item in their product backlog. And as such, it becomes an item that can be further investigated, further refined, and as such, the product improves step by step through means of what they currently call projects. Fair enough. On the other hand, sometimes the question arises, that is covering multiple products, in fact. So my follow-on question to these people who say our project is covering multiple products is, are it really separate products then? Because very often I see an artificial split in companies. They say, hey, but we have the front end of our solution, we have the back end of our solution, we have this team on it. And in fact, these people don't receive separate projects. It should be one big product. So in that case, I advise that organization to put that request in the specific product backlogs of their products. In that way, they just start managing it as product requests. Sometimes there are very hard dependencies, and then I advise the product owners to align with one another and to see how they can improve their product to answer the overall request of the organization or of customers. So yeah, a lot of different ways of tackling projects in a Scrum context. Always think about focus on products, please, and see how these requests then come in the product backlog of the different products. Or if it's only one, that's even easier.
Great. Thanks, Stephen. Next question. What are your suggestions for convincing management of the value of enabling the Scrum team by providing all of the required skills within the Scrum team? Is it clearly communicated, but the response is almost always the lack of capacity, lack of time, lack of people. So how do you get management to buy into the need that the Scrum team needs to be enabled to have all the skills required to deliver?
Yeah. It's a big pitfall for me in agile adoptions that for me, it's a timing aspect. If an organization is not open to free up time, and free up is maybe not the correct word, but to allow people to learn and to grow, they will stay in a current within their current mindset, and they will hardly ever benefit from the advantages Scrum can bring. Convincing people is very hard if they have a certain mindset, a certain meta model in their mind. So what I try to do with these people is to create together with them a systems model. What is a systems model? It's a model showing what parameters, attributes are linked to one another, making the situation what it is today. And very often, for example, if people are not multi-skilled or teams are not cross-skilled, what you will see in such a model, the relations with it, if you, for example, push more skills or less skills in such a model, is that dependencies will raise or lower depending the push you give to the skills. And giving more or less dependencies will impact time to deliver, it will impact quality to deliver. And if management sees how the model, the system, their system model functions in their own context, they can start understanding that their mental model about skills and giving people time to learn new skills, how that is impacting what they actually want. And typically, actually, what I want in my experience is time quality. And by learning, we can show that in that model, if we push more learning, people are more cross-skilled, teams are more cross-functional, that in fact, it has in the end a positive advantage on what they are looking for. Now, of course, that is in time. That will not happen tomorrow. They need to have some patience to see the effects of it. And so I try to do it in that way, make it very visible what their situation is through a systems model, and then influencing which parameters give a positive impact on what they are looking for.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephen. I think there's kind of a bit of a follow-on question here from one of our other attendees, but I think it ties well to where you were going, which is in this case, they're rolling out Scrum and they're using it in their team within an IT, actually a development organization, or development team of software. And they're looking at growing Scrum beyond that to other areas within IT and outside of IT in the organization, but people do not have the time, right, to learn, the time to start experimenting with Scrum. So kind of tied to what you were just talking about, how would you approach this? How would you get people to understand that Scrum is about helping deliver value, and how would you take that on?
Yeah, so even in my first chats with with any organization that is contacting me to help them out, my first question is why? Why are you reaching out to me for implementing Scrum? And then we get into a conversation. Typically, it's not fast enough. We need to scale. Quality is not okay. All those types of reasons come up. And so I get into the conversation like, okay, so let's be very clear. It's not about Scrum, in fact. It's about getting our challenges in the organization solved. Once that gets clear in their mind, I can go into the conversation about it's not just your IT team that will have to change, because we want to solve an organizational challenge. Once they understand that it's not just about IT anymore, we can start addressing these other departments. For example, my current customer is doing vision artificial intelligence initiatives for different customers. So they have about, at this moment, I assume 19 projects that they are trying to deal with 5 teams. And I was like, yeah, cool. That sounds very interesting. How is it going? Yeah, we have deadlines and milestones and etc. in our contracts. Okay, fine. That means if we want to challenge scaling in our organization and scale up from 19 initiatives to 20, 25, 30, maybe more even, we will have to do something with those contracting, because if everything is carved in stone in those contracts, we're screwed. We will not be able to learn fast enough to answer to all the deadlines. So this example clearly showed to them that they need to do something in their sales department with contracting. Can I have sales in those teams? Not really. That will be constrained. Fair enough. But at least we have now a step into the game to ensure that they will start dealing with contracts in an agile fashion. And that goes for all departments. You will see the same, for example, with the HR department. Bonus systems, it's critical for me to ensure people start collaborating. You want different bonus systems typically. And so step by step, I try to explain to them it's not about Scrum, it's really to deal with challenges, and everything that blocks us, we need to remove.
Great. Thanks, Stephen. Here's an age-old question that I know we get quite a bit. What do you think about the product owner being the same person as the Scrum Master at the same time? It happens a lot, we know. What are your thoughts on that? How do you handle the conflict of interest How do you handle the fact that someone's having to try to wear multiple hats at the same time?
The words that have been chosen here are very correct, is try to. We all know that they have different accountabilities. I've seen product owner Scrum Master combination in my initiatives has been rare, but I have seen product owner having also the title of team lead, Scrum Masters having a management role. And each time I see combinations, I point that out to people like, you're wearing now two hats. And that's fine, but be aware of the risks of it. And so for me, it is about, can we deal with the risks that bring having multiple roles? We already have enough risks. So what we're currently doing is we are in fact adding more risks. Dangerous. So I pointed out to them, a product owner who's also Scrum Master will have a preference. So where the Scrum Master is accountable for growing the team, product owner is accountable for maximizing value. What if there is an issue coming up in the team? What's the preference of this person? Is it maximizing value or is it growing the team? And depending what it is, something will suffer. It will. It's just natural. I'm trainer, I'm coach, I'm also my own accountant, and I know what my preference is. So my accounting sometimes suffers. Do I take the risk? I do. Fortunately, I have also an independent accounting supporting me who now and then warms me up a bit. Steven, end of month's coming up. Are you ready? And it's the same if you mix PO, Scrum Master, even developer I've seen, Scrum Master and developer is more common to me. Yeah, it's a big risk. Is it hard to deal with it? We can only point them in the right direction. And sometimes say, hey, you overlooked something here because you have two hats on.
Thanks, Stephen. And yeah, I mean, we talk about this a lot. We talk about focus and the need to focus. And once I start trying to wear those multiple hats, once I start having to divide my focus, I become potentially less effective. And it becomes more and more difficult for me to execute successfully on the job that I need to do. I think there's also that, to me, one of the biggest problems I see in someone playing both the Scrum Master or taking on the Scrum Master accountabilities and the product owner accountabilities. One, they're both very big jobs, but also there's a conflict of interest where, as a Scrum Master, I'm helping to support the team, the organization, the developers, the product owner, and so on. And if I'm trying to do that and I'm the product owner, I've now got a bias. And is good and honest and everything as I am, it's very difficult to overcome those biases of pushing for what I as a product owner think versus what I as a Scrum Master should be doing to help support and really empower the entire team.
Yeah. And what I want to still add to that, the combination of these two is there's a very big difference in focus, in the sense that for me, a product owner should be more outward focusing toward the markets, toward the users, towards customers, whereas the Scrum Master is more inward focusing within the organization and the team, surrounding departments, the management, the environment of that team. So it's quite different, these two.
Definitely, most definitely. So next question. I'm trying to get the team to use more discovery methods and fully embrace, in this case, James is looking at the opportunity solution trees. What other methods in tactics have you used and have you seen being successful in doing discovery type work? And what I'd add to this, he doesn't mention this here, but also validation, right? Discovery is great, but we need to also do that, not just discovery, but we need to do that validation.
Explicit practices, explicit methods, not immediately jumping to mind. My current product owner, for example, has done recently a competitor analysis. And that was very interesting for them to see, like, okay, we are discovering here the market better, not really by checking with prospects or surveys, but really by looking at what are our competitors offering, and then not just blindly following, but really identifying, okay, this is their strength, this is not ours, so fair enough, we don't cover that. It's not a basic item we need to cover in our product. On the other hand, he saw competitors offering certain things where he said, but we are way better than that. And as such, let's put some more efforts in those to show the market that this is us. This is really us. And then he went to a number of prospects with that data, with that information, validating it with them. So it's not just a specific practice or method, it's just a way of stepwise finding out based on both competitors and prospects about what's making most sense for them to focus on right now. I hope this helps a bit.
Great. And thank you. And I'm sure if not, there'll be more questions about it as well. So question around change management and having people who are responsible and helping in manage change management, if you will. Do you see that work best as a standalone organization? And this might be a leading question, but we'll see. Or should we have people who are responsible or accountable for change management assigned within the Scrum team? What works best? What have you seen work?
Yeah. My experience is that I cannot change people. So a role or people or a department fixed on change management, in my experience, I have not seen it being very effective. What we can do though, is that we create an environment where people are starting to be open, like, okay, this could be an idea. Let's try that. Let's figure out how that could work for us. And the people who can create that environment are typically in a management position. So when I do agile adoptions and Scrum implementations, the idea is really work together with the people so that there is a safe place to start trying and sharing things. And through that, change typically is more accepted by people. It's not, there's a change manager there who says that. It's really, it comes from themselves because the environment allows them to do it. It's quite tough work, honestly. But I love to do it.
It is. And I think, having people part of that team really ties that together, right? And makes us feel as a team rather than outside, which actually ties to it the next question, which is a follow-on to the architect question. Fabio kind of adds on to that and says, the architect is saying, I'm the architect and I decide the architecture. It doesn't involve the rest of the team. Yeah. How do you mitigate that? How do you start to bring them in as part of the team? How do you start to get them to see the value of group thinking and collaboration versus us versus them?
Yeah, nice question. That really depends the person on how to approach that thing. What's for me is important is that we get the person into learning that other people are also probably interested in architecture and that it's not a one-person thing, that the more people can bring in their point of view, that the architecture will become better and better. It's for me related to the values of Scrum, really. Is that person, why isn't that person open to it? So openness is a big one there. Do others feel respected if he only decides alone? There are two values that come to mind for me there. One of the things I tried with people and teams with success is to let them list the skills they feel they have right now. And it doesn't matter if others agree with it. It's just, if I feel I have the skill, I just put it on there and on a board, and that's it. That's one step. The second step is then, what skills do I want to learn as a person? And then the next step was, how can we help each other now? Look, there's someone who apparently wants to learn architecture, and we have a great guy who's doing architecture. How can we now make sure that they start sharing information? Of course, here, if the architect says no, thank you, let's have a look at the other side. We have that architect who hopefully wants to learn other things. So, dear architect, what do you want to learn? And probably there's someone else in the team who can help that person. And so by setting a connection between people who want to learn, it might be that this person starts to be open, like, okay, I can learn things. The only thing that is expected from me is that I also help other people to learn. And like that, you build a connection between people and they start learning together. That's one approach I tried. If the person really says, no, thank you, I'm not interested, I don't care, I want to do architecture and that's it, I'm questioning if the person is a real good fit within a Scrum team. What could be, though, that he is becoming an expert within that organization for something, and he is not part of a team, but he's called in as needed, as an expert, so as an advisor maybe. But of course, then he cannot decide the architecture at all anymore. He will be out of the teams. And people will only call him if they are blocked with something like, hey, dear architect, we have a blocking issue here. Can you help us out on the architecture? That could be another way out. I'm not sure what the best way is in that organization with that person, but that are two options that immediately jump to mind.
Great. Thanks, Stephen. Here's a going back, because it's been a long time since you were a new Scrum Master, but you're helping a lot of Scrum Masters. Do you have any what would be your one must-read book for a new Scrum Master, someone kind of just getting started? And what I'll say as well, James, is definitely check out the Scrum.org learning path for Scrum Masters. And we've got a lot of content now. There's a learning series on getting started as a Scrum Master. So check that out. I'll throw the link in the chat in a moment.
Okay. Yeah, I read quite some books. The one that I would immediately recommend is from one of our colleagues. It's from Stefan Jockerman, and it's Mastering Professional Scrum. I think that's a must-read book for people who are getting into it. That's one. I also love Fixing Your Scrum by another one of our colleagues, trainers. So these are two books I really like. There are, of course, multiple others. The Scrum Pocket book from Hunter Verheyen is also quite good for starters. So yeah, that's already 3.
Great, thank you. And I just threw that link to Getting Started as a Scrum Master learning series out in the chat as well for anyone interested. You can find it out on the Resource Center.
Yeah, that's really recommended. I always say to all my students, all my participants of all my classes, go check that one out and keep monitoring it, because very often there's some new stuff also on it. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, we're always putting in, and those are all primarily free resources available for y'all. So next question, Lewis wants to understand a little bit about your thoughts on the value of scaling Scrum. You know, how do you, what do you see? Yeah. What are your thoughts around scaling Scrum?
Yeah, nice one. I think we don't have a choice anymore in this world we are in. In the beginning, it might have been that there was one team working on a product. I hardly see that anymore. There's always 2, 3, 4, 5, and even more teams working on the same product at the same time. So scaling Scrum is no longer a question. It just, we will have to do it. Scrum of Scrums, in the traditional sense that I've heard from, where Scrum Masters come together after a daily and start discussing things, that one I don't believe in. I feel that's a practice that goes against self-managing. Even so, I want that teams connect themselves with one another so that they grow and learn together, that they grow the product together. So for me, it has to be a team member, a developer exercise, more than it's a Scrum Master exercise, where of course Scrum Masters will support it, no doubt. So that's my remark on Scrum of Scrums. Last great, I can't even call it framework. It's more a set of principles, which I really like. It's a very good set of principles, guiding principles for scaling Scrum. We also have Nexus in our portfolio. So these two are really the ones I look into for scaling Scrum. I think the biggest attention point for me with scaling is you want to try to reduce dependencies between the different teams as much as possible. So during, for example, a sprint planning, a common sprint planning, for me, it's important that teams select items from the product backlog that they can work on as independently as possible from the other teams. And if there are dependencies, that they solve them ASAP during sprint planning or shortly after. To me, that is the biggest attention point that I've seen with scaling Scrum.
Yeah, and just to me, I think just remembering Scrum is just Scrum, and coming together and making sure we're able to deal with the dependencies across teams, and understanding how we work together, and understanding the things that need to get accomplished toward a common product goal, and keeping that product goal always top of mind helps kind of guide people, that North Star, as some will talk about.
No product goal and everything goes in all directions. So that is a key factor, even without scaling. It is crucial.
Exactly. So the next question, I guess it's kind of a bit of a follow-up. We're trying to replace our manager-heavy steering committee with a product owner from the business. What's some good advice on how to convince those traditional managers that a product owner is a good option, or actually is a better option, right, or the best option? And would you suggest to keep a steering committee in order to ensure information and commitment is ensured amongst that team? How do you kind of handle that, right? I mean, those folks certainly are stakeholders and should be playing the role of stakeholder for sure. So how would you help to ease that fear of, I'm guessing, I'm reading into this a bit, but I've experienced it as well, that fear of a loss of control and delegating that control to the product owner?
Yeah. Nice question. I even faced it today also with my current customer. So what we will do with that customer, the key aspect in all cases, by the way, is keep things transparent. So that steering committee might feel like we're losing control. So transparency is key here. Have the product goal crystal clear all the time in front of them. Have the items that are on top of mind for that top of the product backlog always crystal clear for them. Ensure the product backlog shows a roadmap, even with the big steps to get to the vision. So that is the first thing I strongly recommend. Make sure there is transparency for these people who were in the steering committee, to ensure that they feel comfortable. I think it's about comfort for these people at that moment. Do you still need the steering committee? That's another question. That's context dependent. For example, my current customer will keep the committee, but more as an information sharing session, like with people from sales. This is in our current pipeline. With people from marketing, this is what we're getting from the market. The product owner who's informing them, this is the roadmap, and those kind of things. And together they finally discuss, and the product owner decides on this is what it will be. And that last thing stays important to me. It's still a product owner decision in the end. It's not a steerco decision, but the product owner has listened to that group of stakeholders. I assume with my current customer, we will be able to get into the future that specific committee is no longer needed, because these people will start joining sprint review sessions, where that transparency will also be available. So for me, it's an in-between, and at my current customer, we still have to keep it because of the comfort level, the control level, the transparency. That's not yet enough, but gradually I will certainly make sure that the sprint review should be enough also for these people. And so I think I'm not trying to convince. Sorry, Eric?
I was going to say, and I think that's one of the big things, and I think this is somewhere that often we fall down as well, is helping folks understand their role in the sprint review and their role overall as a stakeholder, right? I think the role of the stakeholder is often underestimated, and I think getting them to understand that and getting them to understand the value that they continue to bring from the organization is critical.
Yeah, it is. And that committee, it always depends who's always there and what their decision power is. But in the end, if these people join a sprint review and they hear from users, customers, prospects who join the sprint review, input and feedback, if they hear that, they also learn a lot from that. And it guides them in their own organizational mission and strategy very often even. So it's very positive that they get into contact during a sprint review with these people. It's very useful practice.
Absolutely. Perfect. Here's one that I think we probably see quite often. I know I've seen this. On my team, there's a powerful and technically skilled person who is, of course, respected quite well by the team. They show strong resistance to Scrum, however, and that influences the team. Any tips on how to get and keep moving forward and get them to understand and be a champion rather than maybe a deterrence?
It's a person thing again, so I'm not sure who that person is. The thing is, the advantage for me is he's already highly respected by the team, and I like that. So if we can convince this person, we probably have everybody with us. So this is an advantage I see there. I would try to find out why he is resisting to Scrum, because there are so many great things we can do. So why is this person resisting? Is it because he's afraid of losing his job? Could be. If that's the case, I can already guarantee the person there's no real risk that he will lose that, because there's always a lot of work to do, and we can use all his skills very well. So that's not a big issue. We just have to have that chat. If it is losing status, maybe because all of a sudden other people are also doing that role, then we could indicate to that person, hey, but your skill is key for us. You are very technically skilled. And instead of you doing the job yourself, we promote you to also teaching, coaching, mentoring people. And yeah, if it's a status thing, promoting people is always something positive. I'm not saying promoting with bonuses and stuff. I'm just saying you have an additional accountability right now, and that is mentoring and coaching people. So it really depends why the person is blocking on Scrum.
And I wonder if there's also some myths in their mind. There often are, that maybe you can start to uncover by working with them in understanding those myths. They may think that this is just about meetings or the like, and not excuse me, not understanding really that all we're doing here is focusing on delivering value, and we don't know everything up front. And how do we get the team to work together and focus on delivering that value toward that product and sprint goal?
Yeah, definitely. There are a lot of myths going on. And with everything is going on, honestly, with ChatGPT, that's an AI system that is based on existing knowledge, but that knowledge includes quite a lot of myths, and they get promoted even, I see these days.
Yes,
because of AI.
It's an interesting point, Stephen, because we actually did some testing of some ChatGPT stuff, and the problem is the right answers and the wrong answers are just as come across exactly the same from a confidence perspective, and there's no way to determine, is this right or is this wrong, and it's very, very interesting and very scary at the same time.
It is. Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
So next question. I'm a project manager and I'm looking to become a Scrum Master. Any guidance on the skills that I need, the what I need to learn, how tough is it to adjust and change and so on. And I'd add to this. I actually wrote an article on this. I'm a project manager. Does that mean in my company's going agile? Does that mean I'm now a Scrum Master? And it's the typical, I'll say, consultant answer of it depends, right? I know some very, very good project managers that may not be good at Scrum Master, and might be very good at helping the team deliver in tracking, but not maybe have all of the personal skills to really help coach and mentor and teach the team. And I know some very good Scrum Masters who probably wouldn't be great project managers as well. But Stephen, your thoughts?
Yeah, been there, done it. So I was project manager in the past. And it does depend on your current way of dealing with projects, if it will be easy or not. So a traditional project manager typically wants to have all control and decision power. Whereas we are not expecting that at all from a Scrum Master, not at all. You don't have control over how the team will deal with a challenge. You don't have control about what they will size, what they will take on first. You guide them, you give them tips and tricks, you give them practices, you facilitate them, but in the end, it's up to the team. So it's a big shift for this type of people. On the other hand, if you're a project manager, that's really already in the facilitating mindset and guiding team members to come up with estimates in their project and let them do their planning themselves, that's a whole different change that the person will have to go through. With regard to the skills that the person needs, I think it's really about people. We are really a people role. We want to connect people. We want to guide people that they collaborate more. We want to guide people that they learn new things together. We want to facilitate them in dealing with conflict themselves. So there's quite a lot of skills. And if I would pick out the ones that were most useful to me, conflict handling is a big one. Facilitate teams in conflict handling. Another one that was very important to me was facilitate workshops in different ways than I did in the past with PowerPoints and stuff like that. Coaching. I followed quite some sessions myself about what is coaching, what is team coaching, how to deal with it. So that would be my top 3 of skills to focus on based on my experience. And again, it depends where the person comes from, of course, right?
Great. Thanks, Stephen. We've got a couple of questions that I'm grouping together here because they're very similar and have, I think, the answers will tie to both of them, although the questions are a bit different. The first being, my stakeholders aren't available. I don't have any internal or external stakeholders available for the sprint review. Should we reschedule so that we can accommodate the stakeholders, or how would we handle that? And I'm going to then add on to that a separate question, which is how do we adapt to increase that availability of key stakeholders to coming to the sprint review who don't actually, and they don't say this in the question, but I'm reading into it a bit, don't understand really the goal and the value of the sprint review and would rather just see demonstrations or a personalized presentation. And I think in this case, they're missing some of that. What we were talking about earlier is understanding what you are as a stakeholder, and that sprint review is much more than just a review, but it really is an opportunity to learn and feedback. So, I'll take those 2 questions. Should we reschedule if we can't get the availability? And then if it's a consistent problem, how do we get them to understand the value of and why we want them at that sprint review for group think and so on?
Yeah, that's a nice question. I follow the provocative coaching session, so let me be provocative a bit now towards these stakeholders. Dear stakeholders, it's your product, right? It's your initiative. It has to serve you. If this is not important enough for you, why would we need spend time for you? So that would be my provocative stance at that moment. Might be dangerous. Know your stakeholders, if that would be accepted or not. I've done that with a few with positive results. You might have different results. Would I reschedule? Not really. we want to have a heartbeat. That's why Sprint exists, amongst others, to have a heartbeat like every then, this is it. This is the moment where we have the review. This is the moment where the team knows we have to be ready to give it into the hands of users to get feedback. If you delay, if you reschedule, the heartbeat is gone. And without heartbeat, we're dead, right? That's one thing. But it's also, people will feel lost. Like, hey, is it now okay to delay? Is it now accepted to say we are not ready? Is it now accepted to be late in meetings, to just not show up? So that's the wrong message we would give. So no, don't delay it. Now, in order to show people the importance of it, I have used a practice lately. I have a little app on my mobile phone. It's an app for my car, and I demonstrate it. I really do a demo before people and say, look, this is the app. This is how it works. How do you feel? Response, almost always 0, except from a few remarks for people who also drive a similar car. And they say, oh yeah, that's cool, it works. So yeah, thank you so much for the demonstration. So okay, fine, thanks. And then I switched to review mode and sprint review mode, by which I mean I give my mobile phone in the hands of one of these people, stakeholders, and say, try out this with my app, find my car. And then you see the person looking at my mobile phone, ticking a bit left and right, and all of a sudden the person says, I found your car, here it's located. And typically it's wrong. And then I give these people feedback. Look, you've just used the app. I now notice that you've done 5-6 taps on my mobile phone, which was not needed, but apparently the user interface is not okay. And moreover, I know that now you have the wrong result. So the icons shown on that app probably are not the right ones. And like that, I show them the importance of really be present in the sprint review, because I want people to use the result, the outcome, the increment. And through that, I immediately show them also that we can do something with their input, which is the second part of, for me, the sprint review, is to now decide, maybe not always decide, but at least take that feedback seriously and show, okay, how important is it? Is it important for the next increment? Can we delay it and take on the other items that were on the product backlog as it is, knowing these new insights? So through that little exercise I do with them, I let them learn that using the product by themselves during a sprint review has very, very valuable input, not only for the team, but also allows them to see, damn, that was not it. It really needs to improve in this or that other way. And for me, it helped so far. Just that little exercise, it takes about 5 minutes max, to show them that the time they spent in the sprint review is really well spent time for them.
Great, thanks, Stephen. Next question. You opened this can, so I'm going to let it keep going. How have you been using AI to enhance your role, or have you been? And how do you see it being used?
In my role, lately I said, dear ChatGPT, I'm having a visioning workshop in a few days. The goal is this. This is the context. Please come up with a sequence of steps to do a visioning workshop. And it's very impressive what it can do, but you need to take it with a grain of salt and give it your own twist. So for these things, it was very useful. If I asked ChatGPT to answer very specific questions like PO and Scrum Master combined, that's something else. There you need to really pay attention to the myths that exist and take care that you don't fall in the traps following the myths. But for outlining a workshop, for example, very useful things come out.
One of the great things ways I've heard it described, Microsoft does this, is they talk about it as companion technology, right? Not standalone technology. And they talk about how you can use it together with your own intelligence to help make better decisions. And I think that's a great way to think about it. All right. One of the things, I was at a face-to-face engagement last week in Germany with a number of our trainers, and we were talking about this and how they're using, as product owners, using ChatGPT and other technologies to help enhance what they do. They're feeding it things and getting suggestions back and reviewing that. They're pointing it to a set of content and asking it to help write user stories and then reviewing those. So they're not just letting it go off and do its own thing, but they're using it as a way to enhance what they do and also take away some of the repeatable tasks that are more mundane as well.
Yeah, sure. The thing is, you have to understand how AI works a bit. It's a predictive model, in fact, based on past knowledge, and the knowledge has been indicated by people. So if those people follow your reasoning, it's pretty much aligned. If not, it will be different. But typically, for example, ChatGPT has been trained to be pretty positive, and you always get pretty positive answers as a result, of course.
Exactly. Yeah, like I talked about earlier, we were trying it for certain things, and those incorrect answers were just as positive as the correct answers, which were pretty misleading.
Yeah, indeed.
So next question, how do you feel about agile metrics, and how do you feel agile metrics could be used by management? How do we hold a healthy relationship with these metrics so that they're not so that we're getting true answers, right? So that we're not setting it up for success and getting really true measures. So how can management use agile metrics? Do you have some suggestions, some thoughts, some experiences there?
Yeah. I already questioned agile metrics. What about agile metrics? For me, it's about business metrics. It's not about agile in itself. We do agile because of the business. So I guide my teams, my organizations I coach into what's important for us, what's our North Star, what are capabilities we need, and see how to measure those. For example, my current customer, we have a challenge with technical excellence. That's great. So how will we measure technical excellence? What are some metrics? And I always try that the teams themselves come up with those things and not management. Because for me, it's to guide the teams to be more effective, that we implement Scrum and other agile practices. So, for example, they came up with, for us, the code coverage at this moment is bad. Okay, then come up with a metric for code coverage, which is an easy, straightforward one in the end. Another one that they started now was the CI/CD pipeline availability. How many times is it crashing? How many times is it having errors? So for me, it's really about metrics that the team come up to solve their challenges. Another one that they came up is refinement sessions are hard. Why? Because we don't know a lot of techniques. Okay, cool. So how many techniques that we learn? How many techniques did we apply? And what are the results now? And they came up with some metrics for them. So it's not just agile metrics for management. It's really metrics for the teams themselves to guide them solving their challenges. An attention point is don't start comparing teams. A typical one is velocity, and then management starts comparing teams based on velocity. I'm like, yeah, but that's easy to game and it will be gained. So as soon as you start comparing whatever metric across teams, it will be gained. And that's not the purpose at all.
Great. Thanks, Stephen. I just added a link into the chat to evidence-based management, and thinking about what we need to do is it's not about outputs, as you said. It's not about velocity. It's definitely not. And I wrote another article on don't use velocity as a weapon. And it's not, I don't care how much output you have. I care about the value you're delivering and how are we going from opportunity, how are we closing the opportunity gap? And agile metrics, honestly, as you said, I'm not quite sure what they are. I want to have metrics that measure the value that we're delivering and how are we closing that gap in achieving our goal. in really looking toward how do we get to that goal, and then how do we learn from those metrics to improve as we go and improve the work that we're doing.
And this is exactly evidence-based management. It's not about agile metrics. These are really examples of business metrics, or organizational metrics.
Yep, absolutely. Cool. I think we have time for probably one or two more. Here's one that comes up quite often. We often see agile equals Scrum, but we know that's not really the case. Scrum projects, yeah. How do you overcome that? How do you have that conversation with people who just think, I'm going through the motions of mechanical Scrum, now I'm agile?
Mechanical Scrum, for me, you quickly see what's happening. People come to meetings in the beginning, they hardly speak up, and then they check out again, and then after a while they don't come anymore. And this is what I'm telling to people. If you're just doing the mechanical aspects of Scrum, or any other methodology or framework for that matter, if you only do the mechanics of it, people will quickly feel like robots. They don't see value in it, and they'll check out. So for me, what's very important in any of the Scrum events is that people feel that they do inspect things and things are adapted, that there is change happening because of those events, and that each of the artifacts bring transparency, the transparency that's needed to do inspections and adaptations. And if you start having that in each of the events, then the mechanical stuff gets out. And people start to think really about, okay, we're doing a daily Scrum today. What are we now inspecting really? And how will we adapt? So if you get that into it, it gives way more value, and the mechanical gets out of it. It's the same with all the events, in fact. It helps people to come to what is really important. That's one part, to get the mechanicals out. The other thing is about the values of Scrum. If you are sitting in a Scrum event and nobody speaks up, something's probably wrong with the value of respect, openness, commitment, probably focus. And as a Scrum Master, you can try to facilitate that, to grow the trust so that people can be open in the different events, that they start respecting each other, that there is focus in them in the events to come to the goal, to the objective of the event, to get those mechanics out, in fact. So for me, it's a combination between empiricism and the Scrum values and the events to get the mechanical part out of it and really get into what really matters.
Great. Thank you, Stephen. And I want to be conscious of your time and the time of the audience, and try to keep to our time box of 1 hour. There are questions we did not get to. Stephen will have those, and he'll try to respond the best he can via email to folks. He'll have that information for those who provided it, and get those answers. Again, thank you. As we talked about, there are learning paths for the different accountabilities on the website. Check them out. Keep growing that learning. Keep checking out those different pathways, and join other webinars. And feel free to reach out to Stephen. You can always find his profile on the Scrum.org website and contact him directly, or take one of his classes. And with that, connect with the community, join our blog, read those posts, and so on. And I'd like to just say thank you. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you to our audience. And thank you all. This recording will be available shortly. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.